first three teams to make the playoffs at 30%, while the Chiefs have a 12% chance, and then the Dolphins less than a 1% chance at 0.3. Mina Kimes joins us now, and as we look at the big picture and what's happening here in the AFC, and again in the entire NFL, Week 15, a lot on the line here. And so, RC, I'm actually going to start with you on this one. Which quarterback do you think is under the most pressure to perform?
Oh, I think it's Jordan Love. I think when you look who Jordan Love faces this week in the Denver Broncos, it's Jordan Love continuing to show that he could be a quarterback that leads a team to a Super Bowl. There's been all of these questions about who he is and who he can be and who he's following in Green Bay. And since the New York Giants game and Matt LaFleur putting the football in his hands to push the football down the field, to go win games on fourth downs, he's been absolutely excellent. He's playing at an MVP level. When you talk about the Staffords and when you talk about the Drake Mays and you look at the last 3 weeks, that's where Jordan Love is. He's now put his team in a position where they could be the #1 overall seed in the NFC after starting the season against the Detroit Lions in that manner. And so I believe for him now, every game, every opportunity will be a referendum on whether or not they believe he's a Super Bowl caliber franchise quarterback, and it continues this week.
Okay. What do you think, Stephen A? What quarterback?
For me, RC, Dio, Mina, good to see you, Mina. I got to tell y'all, the name that comes to my mind is Lamar Jackson. Listen, you're the Baltimore Ravens. There's expectations that came this year. Like, come on now. Do y'all realize that over the last 5 games, Lamar Jackson hasn't even completed 60% of his passes? Does anybody realize that? He hasn't completed 60% of his passes in the last 5 games. Clearly, he hasn't been healthy. I understand that even though he was running with the football a little bit better last week than I thought he did the week before. But it's just one of those things where you find the Baltimore Ravens, they obviously got a lot of problems, a lot of issues, but clearly he's one of them right now. He hasn't been himself. The expectations obviously are enormous. Josh Allen, to some degree, is living up to his. Lamar Jackson hasn't been over the last several weeks. That's the name that comes to my mind because I think that as I'm watching the AFC, y'all, you look at Jacksonville. I'm a huge fan of the Houston Texans and what I'm seeing them do. Obviously, the Denver Broncos. And then we look at Vrabel in New England with Drake May and these boys. The AFC is not going away. They're not going anywhere. Once upon a time, it was Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. Are you finally going to knock off Patrick Mahomes? Well, Bo Nix said, you know what? You don't really need to worry about that because we taking the division. And damn it, we're going to assist in them not making the damn playoffs. So guess what? It's new blood in the AFC that ain't going away. And to me, the clock is ticking on Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen in terms of the opportunities that are available for them to finally kick down the door.
Mina?
Yeah, it's Patrick Mahomes. You guys are looking at this from the perspective of like narratives and MVP and how do we regard them in their career. All that is great. If Patrick Mahomes loses this week, they're out of the playoffs. His playoff odds, the Chiefs' playoffs odds, rather, drop to below 1%. If they win, gets close to 20%, creeps up and up and up. Look, I understand this Chiefs team is not what it was, and if they get in the playoffs, I imagine a lot of us won't be betting on them to go all the way. I get that. But their playoff hopes are still alive, unlike, say, the Cincinnati Bengals, for example, even though people talk like that. So for Patrick Mahomes, he's got to win this week. Simple as that. If Jordan Love loses, they're still in the playoffs. Lamar, they still got a shot because the AFC North. If Patrick Mahomes loses this game, if Chiefs lose this game, rather, they're not in the playoffs. This is it. Week 15 is for all the marbles for the Kansas City Chiefs.
Man, those are some good names. Honestly, my answer was going to be Lamar.
Why don't you give us one?
It was going to be
because
Lamar.
you took his answer.
It was going to be Lamar. Lamar, for me, is like, this was the runaway Super Bowl pick for most of us to go to in the AFC. I like that Patrick won. For conversation purposes, I do think it's worthy of having the Shedeur Sanders conversation. Yeah. Okay? And in a very, hear me out, in a very, enlightening and positive way. Shedeur played really good this past weekend. And I don't care the opponent. He did a lot of the things in an improved way that were his flaws or warts. And let's live in the hypothetical world where I don't think he's one of the quarterbacks under the most pressure just for this week. I think it's for the next month. I think Shedeur has the opportunity here. If he plays this next month like he did this past Sunday, I think he makes Cleveland go, we're not going to move up for a quarterback in next year's draft. Now, if somebody falls to them, wherever they're selecting, a Dante Moore or a Mendoza falls to maybe the 6 slot, something like that, then we're having that conversation of taking him. But I think Shedeur has the chance to play in a way where you're going to force that organization, or at least the conversation to be had of, we don't need to go be overly aggressive.
Absolutely.
We don't need to chase. But that's a rare window for a 5th-round quarterback. That's a rare opportunity in a 4-week sample to go, okay, maybe he was underdrafted, and maybe we do have something here. If he does that in the next month, and I think this is a microscope opportunity for him to say and play, last week wasn't just the one-off. Because that's kind of what the preseason was, right? One game against Carolina, you're like, okay. And then a game against the Rams, you're like, ugh. Can he stack another game on top of another game on top of another game?
Well, I think the other thing is, too, it shows that Shedeur Sanders earned that opportunity.
Sure.
Because let's be honest, it wasn't in the Cleveland Browns' best interest to elevate this 5th-round quarterback. You drafted Dylan Gabriel in the 3rd round. You acquired 2 veteran quarterbacks in the offseason. So he had to earn this opportunity. And you talk about the uneven play. There were signs against the Las Vegas Raiders that were things we hadn't seen from either quarterback that played prior or previously for the Cleveland Browns. And there was some struggles against the San Francisco 49ers. And then you watched him against the #1 overall pick, who was probably facing or who was facing a better defense. And Shedeur Sanders outplayed him. And so now you look at this 4-game stretch. I don't believe it's pressure. I believe it's opportunity. I believe it's privilege and all things that he earned through his play, and not only his play, through his leadership, through his actions in every post-game press conference, through the things that he's said and the way that he's conducted himself. And when you look at Mendoza, who is probably going to win the Heisman, or Dante Moore at Oregon, I do believe that this class of quarterbacks gives him an even better opportunity to be the future of this franchise or the quarterback next year, because these aren't just runaway, surefire stars that are going to be in this next draft.
Stephen A?
Listen, when you talk about Shedeur Sanders, I stated my opinion yesterday. I don't want him in Cleveland. I don't trust him in Cleveland. I think that there's too much that has happened. There's been too much resistance. And me personally, I would love to see him show out and produce enough for him to be a viable asset that they can move on from. Let them find somebody they're comfortable with and they want. Because to me, I don't think that's the ideal situation for him. I'm not interested in getting into it, because I'll get into it with Dan and we'll be arguing for the next hour about some of the things that I've seen and what I don't like. I'm just not. I know it's a debate show, but damn it, I ain't in the mood this morning. Okay, not for that discussion. All right, especially considering the way we started off the show. I got other things on my mind. But when it comes to Shedeur Sanders, I'm just of the mindset that he has not been put in the most ideal of circumstances to succeed, and I don't think that's by accident. And I just think it would be best for him to move on. But the first order of business is to show that he's worthy of being on an NFL roster. And that's him continuing to progress and play better so he could be better off somewhere else.
Mina, what do you think?
About him, I think in the NFL, it's very hard for a quarterback, especially one not taken in the first round early in his career, to even have that kind of conversation about, wanting to be in a specific place and the circumstances. And I also think Shedeur has probably impressed a lot of people around the league by what he's made out of the circumstances he's in. I actually love this answer from Dan, and I hope people don't take pictures of it and say, they're saying Shedeur Sanders is under pressure. I think you guys have made very clear that you're describing it as an opportunity. From him, I want to see linear improvement, because that's what I saw this last week. I saw accuracy, willingness to throw over the middle of the field, and perhaps most importantly, a willingness to play on time. If he can continue growing in those attributes, he absolutely will make a case for himself to be a starter for the Cleveland Browns next year. A case, frankly, I didn't think he was going to make at all, so he's already surpassed my expectations.
It is supposed to be one of the coldest games in history at Soldier Field this coming weekend. A wind chill less than -10. One of the coldest games in history at Soldier Field this weekend for Shedeur Sanders when he plays the Bears. So that's a challenge in itself. Go ahead.
Shedeur Sanders joined Baker Mayfield as the only rookies in Browns history with more than 350 yards passing and 3 TDs in a game.